Welcome, adventurers! In this video, we are going to take a look at a Sorlock build for the game Baldur's Gate 3. Let's get right into it. For the race, I recommend Wood Half-Elf mainly because they have proficiency with shields and with the skill Stealth. They also have more movement speed and the feature Dark Vision, which is always nice to have. Warlocks have proficiency with their Wisdom and Charisma saving throws, and Sorcerers have proficiency with their Constitution and Charisma saving throws. Since a good Constitution saving throw will help you maintain your concentration, we're going to start with Sorcerer at level 1. For your starting cantrips, I recommend Firebolt, Light, Friend, and Bone Chill. Keep in mind that once you multiclass into Warlock, you should respec your character to get rid of Firebolt because Eldritch Blast is way better. You will also be able to replace Friend or Bone Chill with something else because you can learn those cantrips with your Warlock levels. For your first spells, I suggest Chromatic Orb and Magic Missile. For the subclass, I recommend the Draconic Bloodline Sorcerer, which will give you the feature Draconic Resilience, increasing your HP by 1 for each Sorcerer level. Also, at level 6, it will give you the features Elemental Affinity Damage and Elemental Affinity Resistance. With Elemental Affinity Damage, when you cast a spell that deals damage of the type associated with your Draconic ancestor, you add your Charisma modifier to the damage. And with Elemental Affinity Resistance, when you cast a spell that deals damage of the type associated with your Draconic ancestor, you can spend 1 sorcery point to gain resistance to that damage type. For the Dragon Ancestor, I recommend any of the Dragon type that are associated with fire damage. In Baldur's Gate 3, you will be facing a couple of enemies that are resistant or even immune to fire damage, but not enough for it to be a big problem. However, if this bothers you, the Dragon types associated with lightning damage are also decent options. During my first playthrough, I tried this. I was applying the wet debuff to my enemies by casting the spell Water, and then I would use Lightning Bolt, which does double damage if it hits a creature with the wet debuff. It was a decent strategy, however, there seems to be a problem with Lightning Bolt. Sometimes, when there is elevation in the terrain, the spell does not hit all the enemies inside the area of effect. For that reason, I decided to go with the Red Dragon Ancestor and use Fireball as my main damaging spell. For the background, I suggest taking one that will give you proficiency in a social skill such as Charlatan, Guild Artisan, Noble, or Soldier. If you decide to play as the Dark Urge, you will automatically get the Hunted One background, which is fine since it gives you proficiency with the Intimidation skill. For the ability scores, I recommend the following: 8 in Strength, 16 in Dexterity, 14 in Constitution, 8 in Intelligence, 12 in Wisdom, and 16 in Charisma. For the skill proficiencies, I suggest Deception, Intimidation, or Persuasion. You should take the skills that your background does not cover. At max level, this build will have 10 levels of Sorcerer and 2 levels of Warlock. In my first playthrough, I tried to multi-class before level 5, but taking those 2 levels of Warlock actually felt like it was hurting my progression more than anything else. For that reason, I recommend that you start by taking 5 levels of Sorcerer before multi-classing into Warlock. I will now go over the full leveling up process in detail. At level 2, you can choose 2 metamagic features and you can pick a level 1 spell. For your first 2 metamagic options, I recommend Distant Spell and Twinned Spell. With Distant Spell, you increase the range of your spells by 50% and melee spells get a range of 9 meters. Distant Spell is useful when you are trying to damage creatures out of your normal range or when you want to teleport very far with Misty Step. However, we will swap it out for Careful spell once we have the spell Hypnotic Pattern. More on that later in the video. With Twinned spell, a spell that usually has only one target can be cast on 2 targets instead. This meta magic is great when used with buffing spells such as haste, but it is also useful with some damaging and crowd control spells that usually have only one target. For the spell, I recommend Shield. At level 3, we can pick another meta magic feature and we gain access to level 2 spells. For your meta magic feature, I recommend Quickened spell. With Quickened spell, you can cast cantrips or spells using your bonus action instead of your action, which basically means that you can cast 2 cantrips or spells in one turn for 3 sorcery points. If you are hasted, you can cast 3 cantrips or spells in one turn. For the spells, I recommend that you take Misty Step and that you replace Chromatic Orb with Scorching Ray. At level 4, we get another cantrip, we can choose a level 2 spell, and we get an ability score increase or a feat. For the cantrip, I recommend Shocking Grasp. For the spell, I suggest Mirror Image. For the ability score increase or feat, we are going to increase our charisma by 2 points. Okay, minor spoilers ahead, but you will want to know this, trust me. Around this level, your party will be strong enough to defeat the hag Untitled. Upon fighting her, try to bring her HP as low as possible without killing her. She will then initiate a dialogue and ask you to spare her in exchange for her hair, which you can consume to get +1 to an ability score of your choice. If you decide to do this, which you should, you can respec your character to lower your wisdom to 10 and increase your charisma to 17, which will give you a score of 18. This is huge because it means that by level 4 you will have 20 in your charisma and you will be able to take an extra feat at higher levels. If you know of any other permanent ability score increase opportunities, please let me know in the comments. At level 5, we gain access to level 3 spells. I recommend that you take Fireball and that you replace Mirror Image with Haste. At level 6, we are going to take our first level of Warlock. For the cantrips, we are going to take Eldritch Blast and Friend. For your subclass, I recommend the Fiend because it will give you the feature Dark One's Blessing, which gives you temporary hit points when you kill a creature. For your Warlock spells, I suggest Hellish Rebuke, a fire spell that will do more damage because of the feature Elemental Affinity, and Hex, which is useful when you're trying to conserve your Sorcerer spell slots. At level 7, we are going to take our second and final level of Warlock. For the spell, I recommend Armor of Agathis. For the Eldritch invocations, we are going to take Agonizing Blast and Repelling Blast. With Agonizing Blast, when you cast an Eldritch Blast, you add your Charisma modifier to the damage it deals. And with Repelling Blast, when you hit a creature with Eldritch Blast, you can push the creature up to 4.5 meters away from you. You can turn this feature off by clicking on Passives on the game UI. At level 8, we are back to taking Sorcerer levels. We are going to take the spell Hypnotic Pattern, however, before you do this, I recommend that you respec to swap out Distant Spell for Careful Spell. With Careful Spell, when you use a spell that has Friendly Fire, allies affected by it will automatically succeed their saving throw. This meta magic works especially well in combination with the spell Hypnotic Pattern. For this level, we also get the feature Elemental Affinity, boosting the damage of all of our fire spells. For the level 9, we can pick an additional spell, and I recommend Counter Spell. At level 10, we get another spell, and we get an ability score increase or a feat. For the spell, I suggest Ice Storm for situations where you're facing creatures that are resistant or immune to fire damage. For the ability score increase or feat, if you spared Anti-Ethel and your charisma is already maxed out, then take the feat Warcaster. If your charisma is not already maxed out, like my poor hireling friend here, then increase it by 2 points. For the level 11, we can pick an additional spell. I recommend Firewall. At level 12, we get to pick a cantrip, we can choose one last spell, and we get another metamagic feature. For the cantrip, I recommend Blade Ward, which I use when I have absolutely nothing else to do during my turn. Kinda like an extremely bad version of the dodge action which we don't have in this game. For the spell, I picked Mirror Image, but at this point it does not really matter which one you take since we already got everything we need. And for the metamagic feature, I suggest taking back Distant Spell, but Heightened Spell is also a decent option if you picked more crowd control spells than me. Here is the full spell list that I was using at the end of my first playthrough. Keep in mind that you should adjust this selection based on your playstyle and your personal preferences. That's it for this video, farewell adventurers!